when you click that go live button, that means that's it. That's the point of no return, and you are locked in for a live Panther-Lair show. No going back now because we've got stuff to talk about. It's a Friday night, but we're going live here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Why are we going live on a Friday night on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com? I mean, like, I don't even think that's rhetorical. That was like a dramatic, for dramatic effect asking that question. We all know why we're going live here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com on a Friday night. We all know what we're doing here, right? Is my microphone working? Yeah, I think my mic is on. I just wanted to double check. Sometimes I get paranoid about that kind of thing. We know what we're doing here. Jeff Capel is coming back for season number 9 next season after going 13-20 this year, bringing him to a total overall record at Pitt of 127 wins and 127 losses, 60 wins in the ACC, 92 losses in the ACC, 5 losing seasons out of 8, 1 NCAA tournament appearance, 8 losses in bye games at home, and just as many 20 loss seasons too as he had 20 win seasons too. Jeff Capel is coming back. Alan Green announced the news today at 2:30 p.m. via a lengthy email, and I can read that to you if you'd like. I'm sure you've seen all the bullet points expressing his disappointment in this season, the fact that Pitt was fighting to make the ACC tournament, not on the bubble for the NCAA tournament, but fighting to make the ACC tournament was disappointing to Alan Green. The fact that the team fell so far short of its goals was disappointing to Alan Green. And basically all the things that we've said about this team all season long were disappointing to Alan Green. And he said all this in an email in which the main point was that he's bringing Jeff Capel back for one more year. This was a surprise to me. I imagine it was a surprise to you. It was a surprise to everyone other than Pitt Poker on the message boards, because all signs were indicating that a change was coming. All signs were indicating that Jeff Capel was on his way out and Alan Green would be hiring a new basketball coach at the University of Pittsburgh. And he is hiring a new basketball coach at the University of Pittsburgh. He's just hiring it for the women's program. He's not hiring it for the men's program. And I think a lot of people, almost all of us, expected a hiring for the men's program, but it's not happening. And so with that news, look, I kind of had a feeling that whatever news came today, assuming it came today, we would have a live stream tonight, because if they fired Jeff Capel, we would go live to talk about it. And if they retained Jeff Capel, we would also go live to talk about it. And here we are. I appreciate everybody tuning in tonight to join the conversation. In case you're curious, I mean, you can already see the can. And you know what we've got. Look at how low that is. We're going to kill this thing tonight. We'll finish the bottle. Is there not a more sort of I mean, if you kind of view like the, major sports season, at a school like Pitt, basically running from the start of football season through the end of basketball season, we're kind of at the end of the season right now. We're at the end of the revenue generating sports season. So what better time to kill the bottle than on that? Now, I don't think I'm going straight from the bottle. I did that a couple of years ago, maybe the Boston College game at the end of the 2023 season, or the Duke game at the end of the 23 season, or one of those games. I don't know if I'm going to go straight from the bottle. We might have to fill up a couple of different shots, but we're going to take as much time as we need tonight to talk about this move, talk about this decision to retain Jeff Capel for another year and to run it back with a coach who, as we said, over the course of 8 seasons has won 127 games and lost 127 games. I got a lot of thoughts on this. I have a lot of thoughts on why this move happened. I have a lot of thoughts on how this move happened. And we've also got a couple of people who are already jumping in as super chatters. I kind of feel like I want to go to the super chatters first, maybe. Here, we'll start with this. Michael B. is a super chatter, says, "Hi, Chris. I'm pretty bummed about Jeff Capel coming back. It sucks, actually. There seems to be a bunch of insiders on the board literally making stuff up. What can we do about this when they are so wrong and give false info?" Okay, so this is more a question about message boards and message board etiquette and message board insiders, and probably a sidetrack from what we a sidetrack from the main thing of what we want to talk about here. But you have to, I think you have to understand, like, first of all, when you're on a message board outside of, a select few people, mostly the site staff, you're dealing with anonymous message board posters. I have my name on it. Matt Steinbrink's got his name on it. Jim Hammett has his name on it. Other guys, Houston Wilson and Steven Gertz and Eric Knopsnyder and everybody who writes for us, we put our names on it. But on the message board, you're dealing with, and yeah, I do have a light bulb that's going out here. So I apologize for the strobe effect that comes in every now and then. You do have to understand you're dealing with anonymous message board posters. And when you're an anonymous message board poster, there's a little bit less accountability, other than, hey, that anonymous message board poster was right about this or wrong about that. I think in this situation, okay, there are, and actually this dovetails pretty nicely, Michael B., into my take on the whole situation. Okay. Because if you go back over my posting history and things I said and things I wrote about the Jeff Capel situation at Pitt, dating back to the beginning of January, like if you go through, November, December, January, when things started getting pretty rough, I really felt like, yeah, it's not going very good, but Pitt isn't going to have the money to pay the buyout, and the buyout would protect Jeff Capel again. And I kind of felt that way through January, maybe even into February. But at some point in February, the tone of the conversations I was having started to change. And people who sort of felt unsure that Pitt would be able to come up with a buyout started seeming a bit more confident that the buyout could be met, started becoming a bit more confident that the situation was bad enough that the buyout had to be met. And what's more, I was getting assurances from people, and I continue to get assurances from people that Pitt had Pitt had and has the willingness and the ability to pay that kind of buyout, to pay someone to go away. Now, if you've listened to these podcasts before, read things I've written, I don't have a great stomach for paying people not to work for you. I just don't. And it's not my money. It's not my job. I'm not the athletic director. I don't like the idea of paying somebody not to work for you. But it became pretty apparent to me at a certain point in February that even if I couldn't stomach paying somebody not to work for me, I couldn't stomach that concept, that Pitt was willing to do it. That Pitt, the university, the board of trustees, from the chancellor through the board of trustees to the athletic director, were in alignment with paying someone not to work for them, with paying the buyout and getting rid of Jeff Capel because it had gotten that bad. And I'm pretty confident that that was the case. But I think, so that's what we sort of operated on. That because look, there was some talk about boosters raising the money for the buyout. If the buyout's $12-15 million, which is generally, the range that we think it is, you're not getting $12 to $15 million raised from Pitt donors and Pitt boosters. It's just not happening. The fan base is not that strong. They don't have that level of commitment. Okay. And that's not like bashing the fan base or anything. It's just simple reality. Like, you weren't going to get that kind of money raised from the booster. So if it was going to happen, if you were going to pay the buyout, you were going to have the university step up and do it. The chancellor was going to have to be on board. The board of trustees was going to have to be on board. And the athletic director was going to have to be on board. And from everything we've been able to gather from multiple people, unless it's some massive disinformation campaign, and I don't think that's the case, everything we've been able to gather, all three of those groups, the chancellor, the board of trustees, and the athletic director, were all aligned in getting this done. That the resources were there, the commitment was there, the support was there to make it happen. And we think that once that became the case, probably somewhere in February, maybe a little earlier, Alan Green started the process of looking for coaches. And we believe he made contact with potential coaching candidates, not calling them directly. He might not have even made any calls himself, but contact was made. Feelers were put out, right? You know how this process goes. It's all third-party stuff, My people will call your people type of stuff. Hey, if this happened to be an option, would there be interest? And as he worked through that process, what we have come to sort of understand, or what we've been told, or what we've kind of come to believe, is that Alan Green reached a point where the available candidates who were viable options, he wasn't 100% sold on them. And I think there were candidates he really liked, but I think they weren't necessarily options for him. Jared Calhoun at Utah State is a name that has gotten brought up a lot. And I can't sit here and say what kind of communication Alan Green had with Jared Calhoun or his people or whatever, but we know there's been reporting about Calhoun's reported flirtations with Kansas State, and that Kansas State and Calhoun ultimately broke off talks because Calhoun was holding out for another job, an unspecified other job. Well, he's a Cincinnati guy. I think he went to Cincinnati, played for Huggins or coached with Huggins at Cincinnati. He's got connections to Cincinnati, and boy, howdy, look at that. The Cincinnati job just opened today. And so if Jared Calhoun was on Alan Green's list, maybe Alan Green liked him a lot, but got the pretty distinct impression, and maybe it was told explicitly, dude's going to Cincinnati. If Cincinnati opens, that's the job that he wants. And so Alan Green moves on and looks at other candidates. And maybe as he goes through that process, he starts coming to a certain conclusion of like, look, I'm not 100% sold on any of these guys. And if I'm going to get this commitment from the university, if I have these resources to use, I need to get someone who's as close to a slam dunk home run hire as I can. And so, you end up with sort of two options, and you could term this as a lesser of two evils, depending on your perspective on it. But your two options are, one, do you take this incredible commitment and substantial commitment and financial resources and put them toward a coach that you're not 100% sure is that slam dunk home run hire, slam dunk home run touchdown hire, slam dunk home run touchdown goal hire, so you can put the resources toward that, somebody who's less than what you really feel like you need for this job, or you could take a lot less of you could, keep those resources on reserve, take substantially less resources, run it back another year with Jeff Capel, get the buyout down, which it will be next year. We'll save that part. Take substantially less resources, put it towards a roster, run it back with Jeff Capel, try to get a better roster on the court. And if it fails again, you've at least got the buyout down for next year, and you can maybe try and run, try to go through the process one more time. And you could look at that as lesser of two evils. You could look at that as being pragmatic. It's definitely not the outcome that a large portion of the fan base wanted, and I understand that. I understand why. He went 13-20 this year. He lost 20 games for the second time. He is, like I said it at the top, he's 127-127. He's 60-92 in the ACC. He has as many 20-win seasons as he has 20 loss seasons. It's 5 losing seasons out of 8, and only made the NCAA tournament once. I can recite all this stuff off the top of my head because I wrote a lot of times over the last week. And so you sit back, and I understand that's why the fans are disappointed about this. And that's why it's a surprising move, because this resume for just about any coach in any situation is getting you fired. But I think Alan Green sat back, looked at it, and said, I've got this commitment from the university right now. If I make this move just to make a move, am I jeopardizing the support of the university if it doesn't work out? If they sit back and look at it and say, wait, what? Like, why did you do this if you weren't, if you didn't have a sure thing or as close to a sure thing as possible lined up, why did you do this? And look, we've all followed Pitt for a long time. We know what coaching searches look like when they are not entered with a clear plan A, plan B, plan C, concrete path forward, where you end up scrambling. We've seen that often in like multiple years in succession, when you scramble for a head coach because you didn't have the process planned out well. My understanding of this, my take on this, is that Alan Green has been in this process for more than a month, or who knows, the better part of the last month, the last 2 months. I don't know when he started this process, but I do believe he's been going through the process. I do believe he's been evaluating potential candidates, and seemingly he arrived at the conclusion that what made more sense, or what makes more sense right now, is this course of action. Whether he's right, whether he's wrong, that's the decision that he made. And maybe everybody's keeping up a unified front, but everything I hear is there's alignment on it. The chancellor, the board of trustees, the athletic director are all kind of on the same page with what needs to happen and who's ultimately making these decisions. I think Alan Green has the support of the chancellor and the board of trustees, and he's the support to make the decision and the endorsement to make the decision as he sees fit, the best decision he sees fit. And this is what he chose. So I just spent about 15 minutes, 16 minutes, somewhere around there, laying out the situation as I see it. Now let's talk about it. Josh Newark says, shot of the game goes to Heather Lyke. All right, we got to do it, I guess. Get your shot glasses, everybody. I mean, could I? I don't know. I could probably just put the bottle, just finish the bottle. But I don't want to try it and then end up spitting all over myself on camera. That would be really embarrassing. But it is a Friday night when Pitt just announced they're bringing Jeff Capel back. Let me see if anybody's in the comments. Should I do the whole bottle? Let's see. Roman says finish it. I better open the chaser for that one. All right, since Roman, I'm pretty sure Roman, was it you, Roman? Were you the first commenter on a Panther-Lair Show live stream ever? I think you might have been. And so because you're the one saying to finish it, man, I feel like I owe it to you because if you weren't the first one, you were close to it. All right, so I don't know if I could do this actually. I'm a bit of a weakling. I'm a lightweight in my old age, but for Alan Green, Jeff Capel, Heather Lyke, and anyone else who got Pitt basketball into its current situation, there it is. Oh, that wasn't bad at all. That wasn't bad at all. I could have done that. I could do that again. All right. That's a little burn. For next year, that's what we're going to do on the post-game shows. We'll just hit it, especially since Roman called me out on it or encouraged me. Roman, that one was for you. Oof. All right. Let's see. Xmin 3XX is the super chatter says, you convinced me it's hard to pay someone to go away. I mean, it's not it's not my money, but if it was my money, I'd really have a hard time sort of justifying that. It'd be tough for me to justify paying someone 8 figures to not work for you. I just can't stomach it, but that's the business of sports, I guess. And if you want to, if you're going to be a part of it, if you're going to play in the big, the big sandbox, if you're going to swim in the big pool, oh, my lights are really flashing here. Maybe I'm just losing maybe a light bulb's going out. Or maybe I'm blacking out from the whiskey. But I mean, if you're going to play in the big sandbox, or you're going to swim in the big pool, you got to be willing to do it. I quoted Naughty by Nature in the 3-2-1 column today, that if you do it well and make sure that it counts. I mean, if you're going to operate at a high level or try to operate a high level athletic department, then your revenue sports need to operate at a high level, which means you need to have that level of commitment. And I mean, we're talking about this in terms of the buyout, but here's the other thing. If you're going to do this, whether you fire Jeff Capel or you run it back, I mean, the money has to be there. And I know a lot of Pitt fans, their stomachs are turning at the idea of giving Jeff Capel and this staff more resources to use on the roster, given some of the roster building follies we've seen over the past few years. But the reality is, if you're running it back, you can't run it back and just have an empty building with no wins. You know what I mean? Where you're losing to, I don't know if they've announced any non-conference games yet, but you can't lose bye games. You know what I mean? You need to put a legitimate team on the court. If you're running it back because this was the best option, the best option was to retain Jeff Capel and move forward on this path, then you have to give them the resources to try to win. You have to give them the resources to try to be competitive in the ACC. Okay. And because if you don't do that, if you leave it hanging out to dry, you give them a $5 million roster or something like that. What was even the point of running it back? You know what I mean? Like whatever you save, you're killing even more of the fan base by putting an inferior product on the field or on the court. So if you fired Jeff Capel, you had to pony up the money for the buyout. You had to get the buyout for another coach. You had to pay a new coach and all of his staff, and you had to put up money for a legitimate competitive ACC roster. So it was going to be a significant investment, $30 million, something like that. But you didn't fire Jeff Capel. So you save on the buyout. You save on what you would pay the new coach. You still need to invest in the roster. This can't be a $5 million roster. This can't be a $6 million roster in next season. This needs to be a roster that is competitive in the ACC. And if you want to be competitive in the ACC, you need to pay the money. So you're going to have to come up with the resources and support the program. You can't give them the kind of money that they've had in the past. You have to up it. And I know you don't like that. If you're a Pitt fan who wanted Pitt to get rid of Jeff Capel, you don't like the idea of spending on the roster, but you have to. I think you have to. You can't just blow off this season and leave Capel hanging out to dry with a $4 million roster or a $5 million roster. Because then there was no point in even doing this. You did this because you felt like it gave you the best chance. It was the most pragmatic approach to winning in the coming season. And you know what? You give him a $7 million, an $8 million roster, a $9 million roster. I don't think that's money just wasted. And this is like another part of it too. And I think this is an important piece to consider. I'm going to get to some of we have super chats. We got a lot of chats already lined up. You guys are awesome. If you want to make sure we read your comment or your question, you can, be a super chatter, click the little $sign down at the bottom of the chat screen, kick a couple bucks to the podcast. We appreciate that. And we will definitely get to your comment or your question. Here's the other thing. And this is, I think, where some of the confidence at the Peterson Event Center and beyond comes from, that next year can be better than this year was, that next year can be better than what the previous 8 years were. On more than one occasion, there's been either explicitly or implicitly comments made about the influence and the impact that Jay Kuntz can have. Jay Kuntz, you might remember, the general manager. He was hired last summer. I mean, he was hired a little bit before that. I think it became official in July. Alan Green even mentioned it in his press release today when he talked about why he was retaining Jeff Capel. He talked about some of the things they've done to, quote, modernize the program over the last 10 months. And he mentioned hiring a general manager. And there's a lot of confidence in Jay Kuntz's ability to build the roster. And I don't know enough about his resume or basketball acumen to say whether to vouch for it or not. All I can do is tell you what I've heard from Jeff Capel, what I've heard from Alan Green, and what I've heard from other people around the program in my own experience. There's a feeling, and you know what? I always go back to a quote. Jeff Capel said it, I think, over the summer, one of the first times we talked to him before the season started last year. And he said that Kuntz had a different kind of energy and a different kind of approach than the coaches on the staff. And I think he talked about him being a little more aggressive. And Kuntz was a big part of landing this recruiting class, number 12 recruiting class in the country, number 3 recruiting class in the ACC, this highly vaunted recruiting class with 3 4-star recruits highlighted by Anthony Felici and Chase Foster, 2 really, really good players. Kuntz had a big part to do with that. And there's a feeling, and I've heard this sentiment expressed in different ways by different people, particularly as the season went on, that this roster, the roster we saw this season, was not built by Jay Kuntz, that this was built before he arrived. And it's not the roster Jay Kuntz would have built. Now, I feel like that opens up a whole can of worms about, well, what does that say about Jeff Capel and his staff? But I prefer to, at least for now, we're going to stay on the other side of that with the, implication that a roster built by Jay Kuntz would be better than the one we saw this year. So I think when you look, I think that's an important factor in all this. When we talk about, well, how's it going to be better next year? Why is it going to be better next year? You've got 8 years of evidence where they made one NCAA tournament as a number 11 seed in a play-in game. They won two NCAA tournament games over the last 8 years under Jeff Capel. They have 5 losing seasons and 60-92 record in the ACC. All these things that I keep repeating, 2 21 seasons, 2 20-loss seasons. They went 13-20 in year 8. Like, what reason is there to believe it can be better? I think one is the notion that more resources for roster building, with Jay Kuntz leading the efforts in the transfer portal, both in terms of evaluation, negotiation. Like, I've met Jay Kuntz. The dude is energy, like a lot of energy. And I think I could see him being aggressive and interacting with agents. I think it takes a unique type of personality to operate at a high level and be successful in this current environment with what you have to deal with and what you have to work with. And, like I say, the agents you have to interact with and how you have to interact with players in the portal and how you have to navigate the portal. It's not like college recruiting has ever been in the past. And basketball recruiting is very different from football recruiting. It's not the same type of situation. But I think in both sports, you need a general manager who's got that, maybe has that kind of edge. And I think Jay Kuntz brings some of that to the table. And so I do think there's a significant amount of the hope for this coming season being staked on the idea that the efforts in the transfer portal, led by Jay Kuntz with more resources behind them than what Pitt had a year ago, can produce better results, can get good players here, fill in some of the much needed gaps, and make this team. I mean, it has to be NCAA tournament caliber, right? Like, it has to be a team that's capable of making the NCAA tournament. If they hired a new coach, what I was thinking that I was going to say when I thought they were going to fire Jeff Capel, what I was thinking I was going to say is that if they hire a new coach, that coach has to make it to the tournament by year 2. Might not make it in year 1, brand new coach, rebuilding the roster, probably loses a bunch of the returning guys. Who knows about the recruiting class and all this stuff, but he has to make the tournament by year 2. If you're going to run it back with Jeff Capel, you got to get in next year. I think you have to make the tournament. Now, I don't know if anybody would say, he has to make the tournament or he's going to get fired. I think there's a lot of caveats and different angles and ways that can go, but I think you have to do it. Like, if you're going to run it, you're not running it back with Jeff Capel to make some incremental improvement. You're running it back with Jeff Capel because you believe, if you're Alan Green, that with the right resources and the right players, this coaching staff can get a team into the NCAA tournament. And I think a lot of that hinges on Jay Kuntz and his efforts. We'll see how that goes. He is going to have more resources available to him. Pitt as a whole will have more resources available to them. We'll see if they're able to translate that into success in the transfer portal. Eric Bruno says Alan Green stated something along the lines of he didn't care for the candidates available for Pitt. Do I have that right? This is insulting. I don't know if he said that. I don't know if he said that. It wasn't it. I don't think it was in his statement. I'm pretty sure that would have jumped off the page in his statement, but that's what we've heard from people. That's sort of the narrative that we're going with. And that's kind of the unofficial story coming out of certain circles that I think it's a combination of there were candidates he liked, but for one reason or another, they weren't available to him. And of the candidates who were available, he just didn't feel like they were sure enough things to justify that kind of an investment in a move. Right or wrong. That's sort of what we've gotten. Nico Marcus 5 says, if this roster had Deshaun Jackson all year, how many wins? I have sort of been of the mind that, I don't know, maybe 1 or 2. I just don't know. And so this comes back to the big questions about roster building of, well, if you give them more resources, what kind of roster are they really going to build? Because they built this roster, and I'm still not convinced that even with Deshaun Jackson healthy for all season, I'm still not convinced that it makes a sizable impact on the outcomes. Like, maybe instead of 13-20, maybe they go 15-18. I really don't know that it makes a guy who has averaged more than 20 minutes per game once in his career, averaged more than 8 points per game once in his career, would probably come in here and play 20 or 25 minutes, like, I just don't know if that makes a huge impact, particularly when you then consider that if Deshaun Jackson's playing 20, 25 minutes, Cam Corn is still going to be out there for a ton of minutes, and he's probably going to be playing the 4. And if he's playing the 4, that cuts into Roman Cialepa's opportunities. And maybe Roman Cialepa doesn't develop and grow the way he did over the course of this season to become the player he was by the end of the year, even though he tailed off a bit in the last couple of weeks there. But I mean, I think we all saw the ceiling. I don't know that we would have seen that ceiling if he's not getting the minutes he got. And he wouldn't have got the minutes he got if Cam Corn was playing at the 4 all the time. And Cam Corn would be playing at the 4 all the time if Deshaun Jackson was getting 20, 25 minutes per game. So, like, I'm not really sure that it makes that much of an impact. I mean, maybe the coaching staff would be like, you're an idiot. Of course it does. It would make a huge difference. Would it? Would it make them not the worst three-point shooting team in the ACC? Would it make them not the lowest scoring team in the ACC? I kind of don't know. I know, it changes spacing. And that, does it change the spacing? Like, does it open up more opportunities on the perimeter if you have Deshaun Jackson on the court, which means you have Cam Corn playing a wing position? If Cam Corn is playing the wing, are they really getting more spacing and more opportunities along the perimeter? Like, are defenders having to help off on when Cam Corn's over there playing the 4? So I don't really think Deshaun, like, and maybe it's just me, but I didn't think over the summer Deshaun Jackson would make that big of an impact. And I was still far more concerned about the fact that they didn't really add any shooters. DeMarco Minor's a career 31% three-point shooter, which is exactly where he ended up this season. You know, Noise Indricitis, they had to go back to high school, be like, well, he was really good in high school. That's not something. Like, he ended up being good over the final like 17 games. He was really good, but like it was a guess. It was a projection. Well, Barry Dunning Jr. was really good over the second half of the season last year. Okay, what about the first 3.5 years of his career? And I know there's a story there, and I know he had to bounce around at these different schools. Like, this is nothing against DeMarco Minor, Deshaun Jackson, Noise Indricitis, Barry Dunning Jr. This is just to say that in a pretty freaking crucial year, the year after you took a giant step back to go from NCAA tournament near miss. I just did the thumbs up thing somehow. But to go from NCAA tournament near miss to 17 and 15, you needed a major bounce back this season, and to build the team around a center who never averaged, who was going to a center who was going to give you 20 minutes per game, and a bunch of guys who you had to squint to find the projections that would make you believe they could shoot. What are you building around? And so, like, that's bump the table here. I'm so worked up. Like, that's why I understand why people are hesitant to give this staff more resources to work with, because there are questions about the roster building approach. But maybe that's where Jay Kuntz comes in, right? Let's see. Josh Newark says, Jeff Capel, quoting Omar, "You come at the king, you best not miss." Garrett Sherwin says, I think Alan Green's assessment of this cycle being not great is accurate. I just don't love openly talking to other coaches only to bring Jeff Capel back. I don't know about openly talking to other coaches. Excuse me. I mean, this wasn't like, NFL teams say we brought in sorry, I just got distracted there. Text message, a tree went down in my neighborhood. I hope everybody's okay. Stay safe out there. This wind is crazy. This isn't like the NFL where they say we have a meeting, we are interviewing this coach, or we have concluded our interview with that coach. This was sort of what we heard through sources and back channels. And I don't think Alan Green was like, he wasn't bringing guys in on a private jet to come into the Peterson Event Center. I mean, it's third-party contact. You're trying to feel things out. You're trying to get a sense of the interest. And I think there were coaches that Alan Green really liked. And that just those guys just didn't emerge as legitimate options. And the guys who did emerge as legitimate options they weren't above that bar. You know what I mean? They didn't meet whatever standard Alan Green was looking for. And that's, that's his judgment, I guess. That's his judgment. Eric Bruno says, is the administration at least going to make changes to the support staff? I mean, 8 years of the same staff under Jeff Capel without change is worse. I think there's a possibility. I think there's a possibility we'll see some changes to the coaching staff. You're right. For 8 years, Jeff Capel has had the same assistant coaches on his staff. His brother Jeff, Milan Brown, Tim O'Toole. And he's added people along the way. He's added other coaches to the bench and analysts and support staff. But in terms of the three main assistant coaches, he's had the same three guys for 8 years, which is kind of remarkable on a lot of levels. I think this might be finally the year. I think this might finally be the year when you see some changes. What those are, I don't know. If that was, part of the deal for Capel to bring back, or for Capel to come back, I don't know, but I do think you might see some changes there. Michael B follows up as another super chatter. We appreciate you, sir. Do you think both Noyes Indricitis and Amari Witherspoon will be back? I hope so, especially Noyes. He improved so much in the past month. We have to at least bring him back. I mean, to me, I like the three guys I would prioritize if I'm Capel. And look, all of this, like guys you bring back and the recruiting class, it all becomes much easier and much more likely to happen now that the coaching staff is returning. I think if Jeff Capel got fired and a new coach was hired, it'd be dicey to see if they hold on to Roman Cialeppa, if they hold on to Noyes Indricitis, if they hold on to Amari Witherspoon, if they hold on to Anthony Felici, if they hold on to Chase Foster. Like it's 50-50 on those guys, maybe worse, because relationships, I think, do still matter in sports, in college sports. I think we all sort of look at it now. It's that it's so transactional. It's just 1 year and done, and nobody really, relationships don't matter. I think they do. And if you watched some of the post-game press conferences from the Florida State game, we talked to DeMarco Minor and Barry Dunning Jr. We talked to Jeff Capel, of course, after that loss. And kind of one of the things we asked about a decent amount was like the relationships that are built. Because I sort of have the same impression you do. What are these guys? They're mercenaries. They're 1 year hired hands. They come in here, they're here for a year, and then they're gone. They're not even here for a full calendar year, probably, and they're out of here. Like, what kind of connections can they really build? But I think there was some pretty genuine sentiments and sincere sentiments expressed that those guys do build strong relationships, even in a year, with their teammates, with their coaches, with the people around them. They do build some strong relationships. And so I think those relationships do matter. Even for a guy like Noyes Indricitis or Amari Witherspoon or Roman Cialeppa, they were only here for 1 year. But I think the relationships and the connections with the coaches do matter. And I think they do resonate with those players. And I think if a new coach was hired, it would be an uphill battle to hold on to guys. But because the new coach, because Jeff Capel's coming back, because they're running it back with Capel again, I think you have a much higher likelihood of holding on to, those three players three returning players in particular, and the three incoming recruits, or, at least two of them. It seems like there's a possibility they might only bring in two. I mean, that's a message board conversation we've sort of drifted away from. We can go back to it on the message boards. But as to, you say, as far as Noyes Indricitis and Amari Witherspoon, I think for me, of the returning players, it would be those two guys, and Cialeppa would be the three at the top as priorities. I would really want to bring back Roman Cialeppa. I think he's fun to watch. I think he's got a really high ceiling. I think Noyes Indricitis showed in the last 17 games when he was shooting 44 or 45% from three and averaging 10 points per game. I think he showed that he can play at a pretty high level. Amari Witherspoon in the two ACC tournament games scored, I think, 30 points on 11 of 22 shooting. I'll take that. Still a little bit careless with the basketball, but I think he showed some real promise in those tournament games. So I would want all three of those guys back. You can't run off the entire roster. You got to bring in transfers. They do have a handful of seniors who will be gone. Some guys are going to leave. But you still need some roster members to come back. I would want Roman Cialeppa, Noyes Indricitis, Amari Witherspoon back. I personally would want Makari Moore and Kieran Mullen back. That's five guys I would want back from the current roster. You add in a couple of the recruits, and you still have 6 or 7 spots to play with to fill with transfers. And that should be able to get you a viable roster. And I think you do want to fill all 15 roster spots because you need guys in practice. You need guys to bang against in practice. Need guys to practice against. Jeff Capel has talked a lot of times about how when they have the injuries and stuff like that they don't have enough players to actually practice against. So I would fill all 15 spots. And to do that, I would bring back Kieran Mullen. I would bring back Makari Moore. I would bring back Henry Cody Lau, just to have guys that I can, that you can practice against. I don't know what Papa Amadou Conti is going to do. He's missed the better part of 2 years out of the last 3 due to injuries. I don't know what Brandon Cummings is going to do. Sure doesn't feel like he's going to be around next year. It sure doesn't feel like Papa Amadou Conti is going to be around next year. So those will be a couple spots that open up, and then you fill in transfers. All right, lots of super chatters there. Really appreciate all you guys being super chatters. Let's get over to the regular chat here where there's a ton of comments, and we'll try and work through as many as we can to try to see what all you guys have to say. Josh Newark says, my guess is the lower campus made the final decision. Throwing $15 million to tell a coach not to coach was too tough of a pill to swallow. I don't think that was the case. I don't. I can only go on what I'm told, and maybe people are feeding me a load of crap, so I feed you that load of crap. But on behalf of both of us not wanting to have a load of crap, I'm going to choose to believe what I'm told, which is that Pitt, the university, chancellor, board of trustees were committed to making the investment and paying the buyout and doing what needed to be done in order to make that happen, if that's what Alan Green chose to do. So I think everybody's going to continue to have their own opinions about that. I can only go off what I'm told, and I guess choose to believe it. Josh Newark also says, also, what was the purpose of mentioning Pittsburgh and Fortune 500 companies? Does Alan Green mean that he needs to tap into those companies for donations, or was this lipstick on a pig? Let me get to his statement that he released. There was a bit in there near the end of his statement. Says, our region is one of the most dynamic economic centers in the country. 10 Fortune 500 companies are headquartered here, and more than 30 others maintain a significant presence in the area. Blah, 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 blah. I think you have to go to the sentence before that, where he says, the programs that thrive are the ones that build their entire community together, from alumni and fans to supporters and corporate partners, to create above-the-cap NIL opportunities for our student athletes. This is where the juice is. Okay, this is where the money is. If you want to build a roster, unless you have Warren Buffett or all those SMU oil guys, unless you have mega crazy billionaires who are willing to put up mega crazy dollars for your roster, you need partnerships with companies and corporations, because that's where the big bucks are going to come from to build your roster, to support your roster. And so I think that's what he's driving at. And that's what's most important for Pitt, right? They need the support from the fans, but we all saw what happened with Alliance 412. They were trying to raise $19.76 a month from people. You're not going to get a scoring point guard with $19.76 a month, no matter how many people can, commit to it. You need major commitments from local companies and corporations who are willing to buy in on Pitt athletics and give that money. That's what you need. And that's the most important thing for Pitt to cultivate right now. And I think they've got a handful of people working on that. They've got a handful of people trying to cultivate those relationships and turn them into something. And I don't know how successful those efforts have been, but that's what they need the most. And so I think Alan Green, I think that's his way of saying it without explicitly saying it, okay, we're running it back. We're going to try and get good players in here. But if we're going to do it, we need the support of the local community, and not just the local community, but the local business community. That's where the bucks are. And honestly, we can talk about a billion different things the Pitt Athletic Department should be doing right now. That's number one. And it might be number 2 and number 3 and number 4 and number 5 and number 6. You have to get that money. You have to get that corporate money. Let's see here. Scrolling through the comments, seeing what else you guys are. So PGH2469 says, so Alan Green looked at an empty arena for every home game and was not bothered by that. I don't think that was the case at all. I don't think he was not bothered by that. I don't think he was very much bothered by that. I think that's why it got to the point it got to. Like, Alan Green released a press release today, put out a press release that, let me, hold on. I want to see how many words. So this was a long press release, okay? According to my Word document, it was 559 words, which is pretty long. I mean, it's a significantly longer than a tweet, right? So 559 words. You don't release a 559 word press release saying we're not firing the head coach if you weren't at some point considering firing the head coach. I think he very much was bothered by the attendance at home games. I think he very much was bothered by the fact that they lost 20 games this season. I think he very much was bothered by the 17-15 record last year. I think he very much was bothered by not making the NCAA tournament. I think he very much was bothered by being on the bubble for the conference tournament. I think he very much was bothered by those things. And so he looked into it. And so he went about the process of potentially making a change. And then ultimately decided that the prudent move, the pragmatic move, was to run it back for another year. Dan Davis 775 says the biggest work of fiction since Moby Dick. Pitt boosters and alums have amassed the money to buy Capel out. Look, I got some things right and got some things wrong, but I will say this. I never suggested that there was enough money from the Pitt donors to pay a $15 million buyout. So I'm not sure where that came from. I think even, the tweet of origin on that was misinterpreted. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to get the fans to mobilize in such a way to pay $15 million for a buyout when they wouldn't even they won't even come up with like $10 million for a roster, right? So that didn't happen. So this is funny. I had to take a drink of beer before I read this one because I feel like I might have to talk at length, so I need to wet my whistle. Chaggy says Alan Green is a coward. So that's interesting. I would almost contend, okay? And maybe this is a stretch of logic. Maybe this is the whiskey talking, although that was a while ago. But shout out to me for killing the bottle, huh? Somebody screenshotted me killing the bottle the last time I killed a bottle. I forget. I think that was our friend Chris. Great name. Anyway, Alan Green is a coward. I would actually contend that the braver move in this instance, in this situation, is not firing Jeff Capel. The reactive move, certainly supported by evidence, and certainly the move that's going to be celebrated by the masses, would have been to fire Jeff Capel. You are very much, what's the one meme like? It's probably like a Game of Thrones thing or something, and he pulls his sword out. Like, what's the opinion that'll have you like this, where the masses are about to attack you? Like, not firing Jeff Capel is that. Not firing Jeff Capel, I would actually contend, is the braver move, because you just brought down an S-storm of fan hate from a significant portion, at least of the online fan base. And at this point, I believe the online fan base is the only one that exists, because I was at the Peterson Event Center for almost every home game this season and there wasn't anybody there. So you brought down a significant amount of ill will to do this, to not make this move, to run it back. I would actually contend, wisely or unwisely, it was an act of bravery to bring Jeff Capel back. And I say that only half facetiously, not facetious, sort of facetiously. I don't think it's a cowardly move to do this. I think again, I would say I can't endorse I'm not going to endorse one course of action over the other, but as a pragmatic move and looking at it pragmatically, if you're Alan Green and you feel like you're not going to get the sure thing, or what in your estimation is a sure thing, you feel like you're not going to get the slam dunk, the home run, the guy who's definitely going to take you to the next level, who's definitely going to get to the NCAA tournament next year. Like, I can see the logic for, instead of spending all that money for somebody you're not 100% sold on, spending a lot less of that money to try it again with the guy who's already here and see what can happen. Like, I get it. I don't know if I endorse it or not. I'm not going to endorse it. I'm not going to, condone it or condemn it, either one. But I can kind of see where he could come from. Let's see. Mad Dog says, I know that people are upset and they should be, but if it's true that his buyout was 10 to 15 million, would it be hard to get a new coach and increase the NIL? I'd rather be able to keep the core and the recruiting class. I think there are some people who agree with you about that. Keeping the core together, keeping the foundation of the team, keeping the recruiting class. I get that. The impression I get, what I've been told from people, is that the commitment was there from Pitt to pay the buyout, pay the new coach's buyout, hire the new coach and pay him a competitive salary with the staff and everything else that comes along with that, and be committed to the roster building resources. Look, man, like the narrative of Pitt being cheap, I think, like, outside of public perception, died a few years ago. I think going back to Patrick Gallagher as the chancellor, Pitt has been ponying up more and more money for athletics than they have in the past. I think they've been more committed to athletics than they have in the past. I think Patrick Gallagher sort of started that. I think it started under his reign, although Mark Nordenberg was sort of sneakily a supporter of athletics, particularly certain athletic programs. I think he threw a lot of weight behind Pitt women's basketball, for instance. But Patrick Gallagher, I think, really elevated the support for athletics. And I think Joan Gable has picked that up and taken it forward. But it just hasn't entered the public perception as much as I think it's actually as what reality is. And I think the willingness to facilitate a move from Jeff Capel and do what was necessary to make the program competitive. I think that speaks to the commitment. I think that speaks to what the university is willing to do, what the chancellor is willing to do, what the board of trustees is willing to do, and what the athletic director is willing to do. Again, I talked about this at the very beginning. There's an alignment between those three parties that you need to have together. You need to have the chancellor, the board, and the athletic director on the same page. And I think they are right now. Will it last forever? I don't know, but I think they are right now. And so it would have been a lot of money, maybe more than Pitt should spend. Maybe, like, frugally, it's, or fiscally or financially, it's a bad decision. But I think they were willing to do it. I do. I got a super chatter coming in. Eric Bruno says, wish there was a way to tap into the endowment for money, but we know that's not what it's for. Yeah, I can't even go down that road. Many people dumber than me have said Pitt should use the endowment, and many people smarter than me have explained why they should not use, or why they cannot use the endowment, that it just doesn't work like that. It's not a checking account. But anyway, let's see. I'm going to try and bust through a bunch of these comments and questions as quick as I can. PGH2469 says it's hard to watch other ACC schools move on from their coaches after a few years, and then you have Pitt running it back for year 9 of Jeff Capel. Yeah, I mean, you could probably go at two extremes there. Maybe some schools move on too soon. Maybe some schools need to give their coaches a little more time. Is giving a guy 9 years, quote, giving him a little more time? No, not really. That's a lot of time. Brock says March 13th, 2026, the day where the Pitt men's basketball program officially died. Bro, if there was a day when it officially died, like I can bring up a picture from Kevin Stallings' opening press conference. Because like that was worse. I'm just going to read through as many of these as I can. Brock says this program has been poverty ever since Pitt joined the ACC. The program has been on a downward spiral ever since, and now national laughing stock. I haven't actually, so this day's been a bit overwhelming, as you might assume. We've had lots to do and been kind of busy, but I haven't seen much of the national reaction. Our national people have been responding to this or reacting to this. I haven't seen it. So I'll have to look. Maybe that's what I'll do when I get done. I'll get another beer and read Twitter. Hooray. Corey says Alan Green should be sent packing at this exact moment at this time next year. Just an absurd decision. Well, we'll see how it goes. A-Pops says Jeff Capel served on the committee that hired Alan Green. Weird scenario where someone hired his own boss. Does that make it tougher to fire? I don't think so. I think it's natural to have coaches on a search committee for an athletic director. And then I think No, I just don't think so. Like, I don't think you say like, well, this guy was on the search committee. I can't fire him. I would wager there were other athletic department employees who were on the search committee who are, no longer employed by Pitt or by the athletic department. So I don't think so. Let's see. PGH also says the run of ADs Pitt has had is something. I mean, we'll see. We'll render a verdict. Like, I think one thing we could say is let's render the verdict on Alan Green after his time is over. Like there was a significant portion of time where we thought, I think Heather Lyke was generally considered to be a great athletic director. There was a lot of national press and publicity about it. I think we had concerns at the time, but in retrospect, we don't think so highly of her. I think we can look back at Steve Peterson and say there were a lot of missteps, but the dude also hired, Walt Harris and Ben Howland and Dan Fisher. So that's a pretty good run, Scott Barnes with the change in the basketball program, that's pretty much his legacy right there. So we'll see what Alan Green's legacy ends up being. Like, who knows? They could go out and get a great transfer class and go win 25 games next year and get into the NCAA tournament. Like, with the way turnarounds can be executed in college basketball these days, it's not out of the realm of possibility at all. You say, well, it's out of the realm of possibility for Capel. Capel won 11 games in 2021-22. The next year, they won 24 games and went to the NCAA tournament. So you can have those kind of turnarounds. It can happen. Old Panther 76 says they better commit to spending what they would have paid on the buyout to a roster. I don't think they're going to have a $15 million roster, but I do think they need to get considerable investment in the roster, bring in good transfers, and make this team, give them the best possible team. Let's see. Scroll through here. Special Officer Doofy says they say that Pitt is at the bottom when spending money on players in the ACC, especially in basketball. I don't think they're dead last. I don't think they're in the top half. I think they're right around the middle. I think Pitt basketball's roster this year was probably around $6.5 million, give or take a point million. And that's with Deshaun Jackson on it. So adjust accordingly. I would say that there were definitely teams in the ACC with lower roster budgets, and definitely a bunch of teams with higher roster budgets. Let's see. Just kind of scrolling through here. Dave in Pittsburgh asks, how much of the incoming recruiting class play a role in Jeff Capel staying? I don't think it hurt. I think if you are running it back with Jeff Capel, you're doing so because you believe the path ahead is better. That things can get better, that things can improve. And if you're looking for reasons to believe that things can get better and improve, the incoming recruiting class certainly, gives you some hope, I think. So I think that was a part of it. But I think if Alan Green felt like there was a better option out there, a better coach available, somebody they could bring in that he felt like it was a sure thing or a home run hire, he would have done it. Recruiting class be damned. You hope that the new coach can come in and bring in the recruiting class, but even if he can't, build the roster through the portal. And that's why I think like a new coach would have gotten, you would expect to be in the tournament in 2 years and not just one, as opposed to like this year, they have to make the tournament. They have to. I don't know what happens if they don't, but they have to make the tournament. Mark Shoju says John Wooden could come back from the grave. Until there's significant NIL contributions, winning at Pitt will be tough. Look, that's everywhere. That's you have to you have to invest in the roster to win anywhere. And Pitt has its challenges when it comes to college basketball and being a place where you can win in college basketball. We've seen that it can be done. And in this era, you should be able to do it if you invest the money. You have to invest in the roster in order to win in college basketball. And whether you're at Pitt, whether you're at Duke, whether you're at North Carolina, whether you're at UCLA, the schools that invest are the ones that are going to win. And the schools that don't invest are the ones that are the ones that are not. And so, regardless of who you are and where you are, you need to invest money if you want to win. Garrett Sherwin says, has Alan Green tied himself to Jeff Capel? If so, does that put him on the hot seat? I don't know, but and I was told that, Pitt fully supportive of Alan Green. This is Alan Green's decision to make. Pitt fully supports him, but that doesn't mean they're, kind of hanging him out there to dry on this. But like anybody, Alan Green is going to be judged on the judged on the performance of his job, and his job performance is based on how the athletic programs do. So if Jeff Capel doesn't work out, if they go 13-20 again next year, that's not just going to reflect on Jeff Capel, but it's going to reflect on Alan Green for making the decision to stick with Jeff Capel. Special Officer Doofy says Jeff Capel's players always play hard for him. He just can't get players good enough because you have to pay for them. Well, this year should be a test of that, because they should pay for the players and get good enough players this year. Let's see. Grant Sakuda asked, which number is greater, the number of ACC wins Jeff Capel has this year or the number of shots left in that Maker's bottle? Well, I killed the bottle in one. Oh, there's a little bit left in there. How sad of me. How disappointing by me to leave that little slosh in there. And Pitt won more than one ACC game, Grant. So the answer is more ACC wins. This is interesting. Josh Haskins says, I found it a bit telling that there was no quote from Jeff Capel in the press release, something like this season fell short of our expectations, but I look forward to getting back to work this offseason, blah, blah. I'm hopeful that we'll get a chance to talk to Capel this offseason, hopefully sometime in the near future. Like I would say this, and I don't know if this feels, I don't know if this needs to be said. I don't know if anybody even cares. Like, I'm sure this season sucked for Jeff Capel way more than it sucked for you. I don't mean you, Josh Haskins, like you or me or anybody who followed this team. Any of us who sat in that building when it was miserable and empty, like, it sucked for him more than it sucked for us. I never bought into this idea of, oh, Capel, he's just cashing checks. He must think it's really funny. He just gets to get paid to lose games. He's a competitor. Yeah, like the guy played college basketball at Duke. I don't think you play college basketball at Duke if you don't feel competition in your blood. You know what I mean? Like, if you aren't just completely, that whole like cliche about you hate losing more than you love winning. Like, he's a competitor, and this season I think sucked. Just like the 21-22 season when they went 11-21. Like, I think these seasons take a whole lot out of him. I've often said that, from the beginning, I felt like Jeff Capel could be this great interview and give us great quotes and talk about college sports and talk about, the college experience and talk about all these different things, be a great voice for Pitt and a great face for the athletic department. I always felt like that was the case. But the problem was, for his first 5 years, they lost so much, he was just mad all the time and didn't want to talk about those things. But those 2 years when they won, the year when they made the NCAA tournament, the next season, 2022-23, and then 2023-24, he was great. He was great. Like, his interviews were great because they were winning and he wasn't just pissed off all the time about losing. And so he was a great interview and talked at length. And I think everybody really enjoyed hearing what he had to say. But those other years, those first 5 and the last 2, he's just been annoyed about how much they're losing. And so he doesn't want to do that. Like, I think it kills him to do this. And so I'm off track from your question, Josh, but like, I feel like it bothered him more than it bothered us, the losing and the way this season went. And I think when he gets a chance to talk about it, and I'm sure he would say that. I mean, he said things like that during post-game press conferences as well. I guess the one thing I would say, you're talking about the press release today. It was sort of specifically designed as from the desk of Alan Green. I mean, that's actually what it said. It said from the desk of Alan Green. And so it was just sort of a letter from Alan Green to the Pitt fans. He seems to like doing this. I feel like he did this with the tarping the upper deck announcement as well, did a letter to the Pitt fans. He seems to like doing this letter to the Pitt fans format, and you wouldn't really include a quote from the coach in that. But like I say, we're hoping we get a chance to talk to him at some point this offseason. Hopefully sometime soon, but we'll see. Let's scroll down here and see. Just scrolling through the comments and questions, seeing what people have to say here. You guys saying a lot of things. I fall so far behind on the comments and questions. I mean, we're looking at questions from like 45 minutes ago. Dave Yark, one of our regulars here, we'll go to you, says, what's the buyout next year? I don't really see this move putting any butts in the seats, but Alan Green probably won't have to wait until the end of the season to let Capel go if it's the same old result. The buyout next year, I mean, like, we think it was probably in the $12 to $15 million range this year. It's probably like 10 next year. Will keeping Jeff Capel put butts in the seats? No. I am curious about this. Okay, well, we all know the thing that'll put butts in the seats is winning basketball games. People, if Pitt wins, people will show up to the games. There's a handful that will hold out and say, no, I'm not going until Jeff Capel's fired. Good for you. If they start winning games and they're, 13-2 or something like that, a whole lot of people are going to show up for games. That's what will ultimately get butts in the seats. What I'm curious about, though, and we'll probably talk about this a lot over the next, what is this, March, season starts in November. We'll talk about this a lot over the next 8 months. If Pitt has a really successful run through the transfer portal this offseason, and they get really good transfers, guys who look like they can help a lot, high-level transfers, in a top 10 portal class for whatever the portal rankings are worth, will that give you a little more enthusiasm or optimism for the coming season? Will that maybe get you a little more interested than you are? Like right now, you're really mad. Right now, you're mad that Jeff Capel's coming back. Right now, you're mad that the running back for year 9. Right now, you're mad they're going to give him more resources to build another roster. But if they brought in some really good transfers, let's say they get a point guard who shoots like 42% from 3, right? And they get a center who can also step out and shoot threes and, rim protection, like offer rim protection. Like if they get a couple key pieces, good players that legitimately you're like, wow, that dude's really good. He can help. Will that bump your enthusiasm up a little bit entering the season? I don't think it's going to do it to like get 12,000 in the door for their first ACC game, let alone their first non-conference game. But like, will at least goose it a little bit? A super chatter here. Josh Newark says, what song does the Pitt band sing to represent today? Pitt band. What do they sing to represent today? I don't know. Probably the Goo Goo Dolls song. I guess. I don't know. I don't really know. That Pitt band thing was fun though. I liked hearing them on TV. They used to sing the was it the Biz Marquee song? He's Just a Friend or whatever it was. That was fun. Let's see. Michael B is the super chatter again, says, who's the worst AD? Heather Lyke for her terrible contract extensions, among other things, or Scott Barnes for hiring Kevin Stallings? Well, so like a whole bunch of Heather Lyke's coaching hires have gotten fired. None of them really sank a program that wasn't already. Well, no, that's not entirely true. No. Okay, none of them really sank a program the way the Kevin Stallings hire sank Pitt basketball. She had hires that took somewhat successful programs and made them bad, but it wasn't quite the fall that Pitt basketball was from Jamie Dixon to Kevin Stallings. It's funny about Scott Barnes, though. Like, other than that one thing, he was pretty good. And I know that's very much, other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln type of thing. But, like, other than the Kevin Stallings hire, Scott Barnes was a pretty good athletic director. Did a pretty decent amount of good things at Pitt. But he will always be defined. His legacy will always be defined by hiring Kevin Stallings. So, like, is that fair? Yeah, it is, because you screwed that up really bad. Running off Jamie Dixon and bringing in Kevin Stallings. So, like, yeah, you kind of deserve that. But no offense to Scott Barnes. I hope he's doing well. Let's see. I don't even know where. So when I click over to the super chats, and then when I go back to the regular chat, I have to figure out where I was. And right now I happen to click back over into the middle of everyone telling me to finish the bottle. So I appreciate everybody encouraging me on that, and we did it. So good for us. All right. Let's see here. There's so many comments and questions about me finishing that bottle. I really appreciate it. Our good friends at Power Mizzou says, I love this content. Open another bottle. Brother, we're out. So I got to restock. I got this funny story. Maybe we'll end on this. This is a funny story. This bottle was bought with sponsorship money from our good friends at Backshore Apparel. Backshore Apparel wanted to sponsor the shot of the game. Or maybe our friends at Power Mizzou don't know. When we do our post-game shows after the football games, we do a shot of the game. Backshore Apparel wanted to sponsor the shot of the game. And as we were negotiating the terms of how they would sponsor the shot of the game, I said, why don't you just buy me a bottle? So they sent me like $50 and I bought this bottle of Maker's Mark. Master negotiator right here. Master negotiator. Anyway, all right. I think that's about it. Like, look, you guys have a lot of comments and questions. It would take forever to get through all of these. Let me just say, I appreciate everybody tuning in. It's 7:00. I mean, now it's 8:15 on a Friday night. Well, I really appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. I know it's not our normal time for a live stream. I know you have better things to do on a Friday night. And so I appreciate everybody who tuned in tonight. Listen, do me a favor, like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you can never miss any of our Pitt video content. I don't think we're going to have any live streams over the weekend. I knew we'd have one at some point here when they made an announcement about Jeff Capel. And here we are. Doing it here on Friday night. So I don't think we'll have any live streams this weekend, but we'll have plenty of content at Panther-Lair.com. And then on Monday morning, we'll be back with another Morning Pit here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. But Jeff Capel's back. He's back for another year. We'll see what happens. But we can all put that one to bed. So you may or may not like the news, but like the video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way, the next time we do a live stream out of nowhere, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can turn on alerts, and you'll get a notification. You can get a. I'm getting distracted by the comments. Dave Yark. First of all, DJ Hrenak says he'll buy all the bottles if I promise to chug them all. Dave Yark says it seems like the bottle just checked in. Or just kicked in. I mean, Dave, we did that shot a long time ago. So I've been holding it together for the past like hour and a half. But either way, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So if you subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, you can turn on notifications. You get an alert sent to your phone anytime we go live. So if we do another live stream like this, you won't miss it. All right. Thanks for tuning in tonight. Like and subscribe. Have a good rest of your night. Enjoy your weekend. And we will catch up with you on Monday for the Morning Pit right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.